Well, hello there. And hey, welcome to our webinar today. It's really nice to have you here. And today we're here to talk about, hey, what do you do with your 401k when you retire? This is all about learning and figuring out, how do you go about transitioning when you're going to be retiring. So I'm excited to share this with you. Most people have a pretty good chunk of their nest egg in their company 401k plan. And the question is always, well, what do you do with that? And should you move it, or how do you get the most out of it going forward? So in today's session, I'm going to share with you your different options so that you can do what's best for you. And I'm Cathy Mendell, and I am the founder and the president of Thea Financial. And I'm here to help you turn your retirement savings into a paycheck that lasts. So, okay. Well, first of all, I hope you've had a wonderfully productive day, and that as you are joining us today and you're concentrating on, really the question is how do people transition into retirement? You may have work accounts, 401ks, 403bs, 401as, TSP accounts. I mean, all kinds of accounts, workplace accounts. And the question is what do you do? So most people have a good chunk of their nest egg in their company 401ks or their company plans. So the question is always, I've got these assets. What do I do with them? How do I put them together? What's the process of moving money around? So that's what we're going to start off with today. So I'm Cathy Mendell. I am the founder and the president of Thea Financial. And my goal today is to help you turn your retirement savings into security for your retirement. And usually that's in the form of some kind of a paycheck, because that is where security comes from. I always say there is no retirement without an income, right? And especially an income that will be there month after month. So for most people, as they come to us and talk with us, the thing is they've got retirement and they have savings, but they don't know what to do to turn them into a reliable income. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's talk about what you do. So what are the factors that you should be looking at that make the most sense for you in your situation when it comes to your company money, the money that you have saved at work? So really there's 4 things that you can do. I'm going to talk about these in a little detail, but for now, I'll just cover them in general. You have 4 options. You can leave it in the company plan. So you can retire, you can leave the money there. If you're happy with the 401k and you don't need the money right away, you can leave it there if you want to. You can do a tax-free rollover to an IRA. So it's a very specific process. We'll talk about that in just a minute. An IRA is an individual retirement account. It's money that belongs to you and you only, and you are now in control of the allocation and what goes on with those dollars. You can cash it out. You can cash it out and get a check. Now you have to be careful with that, because when you do that, it becomes taxable. Whatever you take out in cash becomes taxable. So you will pay taxes and you may possibly have to pay a penalty. Or you can roll it into a new 401k. So let's just assume that you're moving from a job to a job. It's not necessarily you're retiring, you're just moving up. Maybe you got a new offer and a new opportunity. What are your options there? Well, you can roll it into a new 401k. All right. So let's talk about those options and in a little bit more detail. So the first one is leaving it in the company plan. Now, I'm just going to assume that you are actually looking at retirement, that this is not about transitioning from one company to another, but it's actually you're saying, okay, I do want to retire and I've got money. You might have money in several 401ks, honestly. But whatever it is, you have money. There's reasons sometimes though, that leaving it in the 401k is the right thing to do. There's something called the rule of 55. Now, what the rule of 55 says is that if you want to retire and you're between the ages of 55 and 59 and a half, okay, you can leave the money in the 401k and you can take withdrawals. Now, the withdrawals are taxable, but there's no penalty, because any qualified money, any money that you have that has been tax deferred The earliest that you can get to that is 59 and a half without penalty. It's the, the prompting from the government to help people and to deter people from taking money out of their retirement savings and spending it when they're still working. So there is a penalty, and it's a 10% penalty. So you can take withdrawals without paying that penalty if you're using the rule of 55. Another reason that you may want to leave money in a 401k is there's a higher standard of creditor protection. This may be wise if you're going through a divorce, or you've got a situation that you're worried about, that there could be some ramification of losing that money to a creditor. So 401ks, typically creditors cannot take money from a 401k. The downside of leaving money there is the lack of investment options. Most of the time when a client is sharing their statements with me, and we look at their investment options, they have, 15 or 20 things to choose from. Well, you know that there's thousands of ways to invest your money, but the 401k is not designed for retirement. The 401k is designed to accumulate. So most of the investment options that will be inside of a 401k are designed for growth, for accumulation, not preservation. So, you don't have as many investment options. And one other thing that can be difficult is the ease of accessing the funds. So when we talk about that, if you want to do a Roth conversion, or you want to take out a withdrawal, or you want to change your beneficiaries, or you want to rebalance, and you're not working for the company anymore, it involves paperwork, it involves a lot of interaction, and it depends on who you're working with how fast that gets done. So the ease of access can be something that is a deterrent for some people. The tax-free rollover to the IRA, let's talk about that. The other option you have is when you retire is to move that money out of the company plan and into an IRA, an individual retirement account. It's done through a process called a rollover, and it's a very specific paper trail that has to be followed correctly, or it could result in taxation issues that you do not want to face. Okay. So an individual retirement account, the IRA, gives you the option of the entire world of investing. You can move your money to anything that will work for you, that will set you up and make your life work in retirement. The rollover has a very specific process to follow. It requires specific paperwork. The company that is receiving the funds has to sign off and give permission for the company to send the funds to them, and that they will agree to be the custodian of your tax deferred money. So it's not something where you can just get a check and just walk in anywhere and deposit that check. So we'll talk about that in just a second. There's another thing you can do, though, that some companies will allow you to do, and it's called an in-service withdrawal. Now you might be saying, well, I'm on this webinar today. I'm not ready to retire. I'm going to retire in 2 years, as an example. And you're looking at your situation and you're thinking, I'm okay as long as the market doesn't take a big drop. If it takes a big drop, I probably won't be able to retire. Well, if you feel that way, you might want to do an in-service withdrawal. Take some of that money out and get it into a situation that has less vulnerability to market swings. So that's called an in-service withdrawal. So what that means is that your company will allow you, once you hit a certain age. Now, we have a lot of nurses that we work with, and many of them, when they hit the age of 60, can do an in-service withdrawal. Other companies that I've worked with, you have to be 65 to do the in-service withdrawal. So it's something you have to look at your plan or talk to your plan administrator. Why would you want to move money into an IRA? Well, truthfully, it's really the best place to keep tax deferred money. You have so much options. You have control. It's easy to access your money. You can partner up with a financial team that will develop a plan for you and really allocate your assets to make sure that you're good in your retirement. So there's a lot of reasons to do that. The other thing you can do is, once it comes over as an IRA, then you can do Roth conversions. You can begin to move money from the taxable status to the tax-free status. You can't do that in a 401k once you stop working. So there are reasons to consider moving those funds. Now, we talked about the another option, which is to take a check. now this one is pretty much not desirable, okay? Because when you take a check, the company that issues the check, the company you're working for, has a mandatory 20% federal withholding that they have to withhold on those funds. Now, when at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, that 20% may not have covered your taxes. You may still owe more. Why would you owe more? Well, because you have a salary and you took this money out. It all comes together. You may end up in a 30% tax bracket. So you've really got to be careful here. Now, the 20% withholding is only the federal. If you live in a state that has state taxes, then you would have that to pay as well. And if you're under the age of 59 and a half, you're going to have a tax penalty. So the tax ramifications of taking cash is huge. Now, if you have a small 401k, let's say that you just started working for this company, you only got, $10,000 into it and they went belly up. Okay. And so you have to roll your money out. Well, that's not such a big deal. If you wanted to take the money out, pay the taxes on it, pay the penalty, it isn't the end of the world. But if it's 500,000, that's a whole different story. And the final thing that you can do with moving money around in a 401k is if you're not through working and you just want to take the money from your plan and add it to your new company. So let's say that you're a pharmaceutical rep and you have been working and saving money in your company plan and you find a better job with a different pharmaceutical company. So you move your assets from where they are to the new 401k. Now you can do that. But you don't have to do that. You can also move your money from the 401k where it is into an IRA. Now you have the whole world of investing and the whole world of planning and strategy for your retirement that you can begin working on. Okay. Now, if you have already done a rollover or already moved money from a 401k to a 401k, and you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, I wish I would have known that. I would have done something differently. Well, you can, because even if you're not of the age to do the in-service withdrawal, if it's money that you put in there from another 401k, you can move that money out at any time and move it into an IRA. So when we're talking about this, if you decide that, you know what, Cathy, I really want to sit down and have a conversation with you, this is very individual. Everyone's circumstances is so different. So the money that you put into the 401k, if they will allow you to take, some companies don't take it. So you have to find out if you could do that. But it can be a situation where it kind of gets stuck there and it limits your options on what you can do. So you want to give that some thought. What I will say is all of these decisions about where to move money, it all has to do with your financial plan. Now, for many people, their financial plan when they're working is just save money. That's their plan. Okay. So what is a plan anyway? So a stack of investment statements is not a plan. That's the assets, but that isn't the plan. What a plan is when you decide to transition from a paycheck to creating your own paycheck from your savings, you've got to have a plan for that. You can't just, well, some people do. They just go into retirement and hope for the best. That's not the way that we do it here. Okay. So what a plan is, when we're talking about a financial plan, what we're talking about is what your investments need to do to support your retirement, how you're going to get income, where it's going to come from, how taxes are going to work on retirement income, a fresh look at all your insurances, and especially when you decide to stop working, your health care. Because right now you probably have health care through a company plan. When you have to do it on your own, if you're not Medicare eligible yet, then there's things that you've got to know about how to do that. And then maybe you own your own business and you have disability insurance. Well, when you retire, do you still need that? So we really do take a look at everything. And then the final one is just basically getting your legal affairs in order. Your financial plan for retirement is going to map out the next 20 or 30 years of your money plan. And you're building out the financial security of your future. And it is a very big deal. Now, it probably won't surprise you to see these statistics. The Alliance for Lifetime Income did a survey of women who are within 1 year of retirement. And this is what they discovered. They said 8 out of 10 pre-retirees didn't have any kind of a plan set up yet that they follow. So what they were saying is only 25% or 25% said they didn't have a plan of any kind, no plan. They had savings. They just didn't have, they had done none of this yet. 35% said they had a sense of direction in mind, but they didn't have a well-developed plan. 20% said that they had a general financial plan, but they didn't feel that it went far enough. And 20% said they had done this. They have been working with someone. They have a very strong plan put together that they are following, and that's going to lead them to this next chapter of their life. What I would say to you is that when you're considering, where should I put my money? Should I roll it out of there? Should I not roll it out of there? You want to take that into the context of a plan versus just, does this seem like a good idea? Because you know what? There's a lot of financial knowledge out there. I mean, it does. You just Google a question and you're going to get 18 million answers in a second, especially when it comes to money. And what I would say is that your plan has to be unique. It's unique to you, how you spend money, what you want to have happen. It's a very individual action. When you get to retirement, you're going to have, most people have a lot of things, a lot of assets, a lot of stuff that they've accumulated over their work history. The end goal, though, of all of those things is to figure out how you're going to turn that into your retirement paycheck. So you may have Social Security or stocks, bonds, mutual fund, brokerage accounts. You might have an annuity. You could have a 401k or an IRA or a Roth IRA or real estate. You could have rentals. You could own a business. You might have deferred comp. You could have stock options. You might have a defined benefit where you have a pension. You could have a cash value whole policy, stock grants, inherited accounts, or just simple savings, right? All of those things are going to be folded into your plan. And it's going to answer a fundamental question is, what do I do with these assets to set myself up for a fun and relaxing and stress-free retirement, my next chapter of my life? How do I turn all of these assets into that? I want to show you Sandra, because Sandra is a client. And when I met Sandra, she's 57 years old. She's been a nurse for 32 years, and she's done. She's spent, she's exhausted, and she's tired of it. And when we met Sandra, her concern was that she was too young to retire, and she just didn't feel like she could, that she had any choices. She felt like she had to keep working, and it had turned into misery. I don't know if you know anyone that's going through that, but that's tough when you're towards you're in a situation where you feel like you're too young. I don't know if I have enough money, but I want to show you how she was able to accomplish her goal. Because remember, I said everyone's plan is unique. Well, we were able to use the rule of 55 for Sandra. Now, like I said, she'd been a nurse for a long time. She had $766,000 in her 401k. She had $200,000 in a Roth and about $80,000 in savings. So she's made really good money her whole life, and she's done a good job saving. Now, the interesting thing about Sandra is she doesn't need a lot of income. She only needs about $4,500 a month to cover her essential bills. But she said, I want at least $6,000 a month coming in that I can, so I have money to spend. I don't want to retire and just sit home. But she's, just seeing the sparkle in her eyes, thinking about, really, is this possible? Well, it is possible for her because of one thing. We use the rule of 55. So what we did is we divided her money into two pools. We left 216,000 in the 401k because remember we said as long as you're 55 years old and not yet 59, you don't get that penalty. Now she has to pay taxes on this, but the taxes on 72,000 by the time you take the standard deduction and everything else out, it wasn't bad, right? It's not like when you're working, when you're paying, Social Security taxes and all of that stuff. She just had to pay her federal taxes. She lives in a state that doesn't have state taxes. So what we're looking at here is she has 72,000 that we're going to take out for 3 years. So she's 57, she'll be, 58, 59. When she turns 60, what she did is what Sandra's goal was, she did not want the stock market to have anything to do with her retirement. She said, I'm retiring young. If anything goes sideways in the market, especially, early on, and her money gets depleted, then she has to go back to work. She doesn't have a choice. So she chose to use a defined benefit annuity. She put 450,000 in there. When she turns 60, that IRA annuity will give her almost 40,000 a year for the rest of her life. That's an 8% withdrawal, which is incredible. So she gets 39,000. Now she's got this Roth IRA that's continuing to grow. So we're going to take for 2 years, we're going to take the money out of there. Why would we do that? Well, because of this. She has to pay her own health insurance. She's not yet 65. And we're trying to get her health insurance premiums as low as we can. And health insurance premiums before you are Medicare eligible are based on your income, just so you know. So we were able to get her health insurance premiums down to about $300 a month, which meant that, this absolutely worked. So when we did that, she's going to start her Social Security at 62. Since she's retiring so young, it'll be 33,000. She'll have her annuity. Her guaranteed income is all in green, is 72,856 a year. It totally met her goal. She will never run out of money. She will always have $72,000 of income. And then the rest of her money can sit and grow. Now, I do believe, this is my theory, that Sandra is going to want to do some part-time stuff, maybe some on-call work. Being a nurse, she can do that. Do some on-call work every so often, a couple days a month, just for socialization. But my point is that we were able to help her accomplish her goal by using a rule that's available to you to use. And here's another person. This is Elizabeth. And Elizabeth she's retiring at 65. She wanted to work until she could get to Medicare age. So she's going to retire at 65. She's had a good job. She's done a great job in saving, 966,000 in her 401k, 200,000 in a Roth, and 80,000 in savings. Well, actually, she doesn't have any Roth. She has 120,000 in savings and no Roth. Well, she's concerned that she's got so much pre-tax money, but she didn't want to. She's been saving for so long pre-tax that she didn't feel like 1 or 2 years of saving in a Roth was going to make any difference at all. So what we did is her Social Security, we're going to go ahead and turn it on at 65, is 40,000. She chose a defined benefit annuity as well. It'll give her 42,000 of income for life. That gives her a guarantee of 83,000 a year. Her goal was to have $7,000 a month of income. She does. She has $7,000 a month of income plus an additional $500,000 that is not dedicated to income. It's totally at her discretion. Well, here's the thing that we did for Elizabeth. See, her cost of Medicare is $185 a month, right? That's what Medicare costs. That's the basic plan. As long as her income stays below $106,000, her Medicare costs do not go up. If her income goes above $106,000, her Medicare costs will go up. So what she's going to do is she's going to do Roth conversions. From that $400,000, she's going to start moving money over to an IRA. She wants to stay under the $106,000 because she doesn't want to have an increase in her health care, but she wants to get some of that money out of there, and she's going to do it over a period of time. So the cool thing about this is her tax bracket. Her on 83,000, she's only going to be in a 10% tax bracket, and that includes the state. That's federal and state. Okay. She lives in a state that does have a state tax. But even with the Roth conversions, it's still only going to take her tax bracket to the 14% bracket. 14% taxes, federal and state, is still really low. I mean, on her job, on her work, she was in a much higher tax bracket than that. So she's going to be able to gradually move money out of that IRA and into the Roth so that she has more money to spend that's tax-free when she wants to replace a car, do some big traveling, and she will always have a secure income. So do you see what I'm saying about how this is a very individual activity when we put together a plan? I wanted to show you a little bit about how we think about this on a high level as a company. This is our Thea Path planning process. This is our philosophy. And how we look at this is basically what we like to think of as you have your assets, the sum total of all your assets, and we're talking everything. Your Social Security, if you have a pension, if you've got investments, if you have rentals, we throw it all into that pool, okay? And then what we do is we figure out how much of that income do you want to have liquid? Everybody's different on that one, by the way. Some people say, hey, if I have 50,000 in a money market at the bank, I'm good with that. Others say, no, I want 200,000. I mean, I've had it all over the board. I've had some people say, well, why would I keep that much over there? I might as well have it invested, So it's very personal, but it's CDs, money market, bank account, whatever that number is. Then you see where the red line is. You see, I like to put a red line there because everything to the left of the red line is your lifestyle. So we like to call that protected income. There's a lot of strategies to do that. You can use a defined benefit annuity. You can use a market shock absorber type of an account. You can use dividends and interest. There's lots of ways to do this. There's no one right way. But what I will say is that what happens above the green line is not impacted by the stock market. That is the most important thing because it's out of your control. Everything to the right is everything that's left over. Some years it's going to be growing like a weed, and some years it's going to be down 30%. It won't matter if you're not trying to draw an income off of it. If you're trying to draw an income off of it and it's down 30% and you're taking an income, now we have a problem. Okay. So here's an example of a gal. Her name is Christine. And Christine, this was her picture, her big picture. She had, she only wanted 50,000. She said 50,000 is more than enough for me to have liquid like that. So that's good. And what we do is when the 50,000 depletes down to a number that she wants to build it back up, we just take a withdrawal from her growth portfolio and replenish that. Okay. She designated 500,000 so that she knew that she would always have the income that she wanted for life. She did not want to worry about income. So it covers her monthly expenses and then some. And then everything that's in the growth, that's where she pulls money out to travel, to replace a vehicle, for enjoyment, to help the grandkids. That's that money. I call it the happy money. Okay. And it's at your discretion when you use it. So that's what makes this work. You have money that is always there month after month, reliable paycheck. Then you have your growth money that's at your discretion. When we think about all of that, when we're talking about that, I had actually a client say to me, this was Gail and Paul, and she said, regardless of how much our financial advisor told us that we would have enough, we were worried that we would outlive our money because we didn't have any kind of an income plan. She said it was all what their plan, this is what their advisor had recommended, that they just had their investments and they had their Social Security and they just took a withdrawal. But it was so vague. There was nothing specific set up for income. And it was just driving both of them nuts. She said, we have to know that in any market condition that our income will be there. And that was her comment on that. So really, when we're talking about, moving money out of a Roth and setting up an IRA or doing Roth conversions or all the things, the question that you have to come down to, it all boils down to this: how are you going to turn your retirement savings into ongoing, reliable ongoing income? The goal, and this, I just mentioned this a second ago, but I really do believe this. The goal is to keep market upheaval from ruining your retirement. The thing that we look at with this is that I remember when COVID happened and the market went down, 25%? People that had just retired the year before, do you know how that felt? That's really hard to stomach when you just retired, everything is good. Who would have ever thought a pandemic would come along? People felt that way in 2000 when 9/11 happened. That was unexpected. You couldn't have ever figured that that was going to happen. 2008 happened. The reality is that the thing that you have to know when you go into retirement, I don't care where you keep your money. If you leave it in the 401k, if you roll it to an IRA, if you set money up in a defined, income product, if you do a market shock, it doesn't matter. The goal is that you know that you're going to be good regardless of what happens. I found this chart years ago, and the first time I saw it, I've been helping people retire for 15 years. The first time I saw this, I just had the biggest aha. I'll tell you what I saw in it. This is from 1930 to 2025. The green is all the up years in the market. Okay. And I thought, I love that. Look at how many up years there are. We expect the market to grow. I expect the market to grow. I do. So that's great. And when you are working and you're putting money in, it's really fun when you look at your statements or you go online and dial in and, oh, look at that. We made 17% last year or whatever the number is, right? It's not so fun when the market is down. What I saw from this chart was that, okay, green is normal, but so is red. There's never been a time in the history of the stock market that we haven't had down years. There's never been a time where we've had more than 5 years of continual up either. So when I looked at this, I thought, okay, when you're working, it affects you indirectly. You just don't look at your statements for a while. Okay. That's what I had one lady said. She said, I just didn't look. I couldn't look. I just said, I'm working. It affects me indirectly. I can't do this. It's too discouraging. So she didn't look. But when you're retired or when you're going into retirement or you're anticipating retirement, it becomes very real. And you know what's hard about this? It's real and you can't fix it. And what I want to say is that when you are making decisions about retirement, there's some things you have to think about. You've got your money that you've been saving for your whole life. You've got all these options on where it's going to go. It has to make your personal life work. It's not something that you Google it, you go to a calculator and you find something, that, oh, this strategy, that strategy. I'm telling you, to me, that is not the way to go. You want somebody to ask you some questions about you. What does your retirement look like? How much income do you need every month? Let's figure out where that's going to come from. And then that tells us what your money needs to be doing. So I have to tell you, I've really enjoyed spending some time with you today. And Tracy said this to me. She lives up in Washington, and we were talking. She was a retired nurse, and she said, I'm probably okay unless the market crashes. And if that happens, I'm worried I won't have enough and I'll run out. And I thought to myself, holy cow, there's no way I would retire if I felt that way. And I would just want to encourage you that if you do feel that way, or if you're thinking, I don't really have a plan yet, I don't really know, where things should be at and how it should all be settled. I really want to encourage you to take some time with us. I'm going to give you an opportunity in just a second to set up an appointment. It's just a strategy session. We're just going to talk about your vision for your retirement. But when we think about this, there's a big difference between hoping that something will work and knowing that it will work. You see, like with Sandra, she knew that she'd have that income coming in every month for the rest of her life. No questions about it. With Elizabeth, same thing, but she still had a large pool of money that she could spend at her discretion. There's a difference between saying, I have this pool of money, I'm just going to take withdrawals and hope for the best. I'm telling you, that will give you heartburn in the worst way. So I'm just going to encourage you to get yourself in a position where you know that you're good, not that you hope that you're good. Okay. So with that, I'd like to invite you to take a look at our process that we use at Thea. It's our Thea planning system. Our first meeting is we just talk to each other about your goals and where you are and what you've done so far. And you may have more money than what we've been talking about today. You may have less. It doesn't really matter. But we just talk about where you are, what you need, what you would like to see happen. When do you want to retire? If you're already retired, what do you need to have coming in to be good, to be solid? Then in our next appointment, we actually talk about your finances. We talk about your accounts and where your money's at. And we really take a hard look at the whole thing. Our team goes to work. We create, kind of a draft of a plan, and then we get back together and we share that with you. And if you decide you want to work with us, we're very happy about that. But I feel like it's really important to have those first two discussions with anyone that is even thinking about the next chapter of their life. And if that's something you would like to do, I'm going to put this up here. It's a 45-minute appointment. So it's not hours long. No decisions are made on the first two meetings that we meet together. We just take our time. But we would encourage you to spend the time and look at, what are my options? What should I be thinking about? How can I make sure that I am good long-term? And with that, I would like to say, first of all, thank you for being here today. It was fun to have you on. And I hope that today was helpful to you. First of all, what do you do with the 401k? But the bigger picture is what do you do to create your own personal plan? So with that, thank you. Be sure and take us up on this offer for meeting with us. We really do value time that we spend with people that have connected with us at Thea, and we're happy to do that with you as well. Okay. Have a great evening. Thanks.